Hey guys, so today I'm going to be talking a little bit about what I like to keep in my car at all times for emergency and survival situations. However, many of the things I will be talking about in this video I also use on a day-to-day basis when doing outdoor activities in remote settings. So I've organized the video in 6 sections and I will leave the timestamps below so that you can skip to the different sections if you want to skip around. But the first section is going to be clothing, followed by shelter and sleep, food and water, car and utility, first aid, and lastly, a small section about some of the personal items I keep in the car at all times. So I hope you enjoy, and let's get into it. So when I am stocking up on clothing to put in my car, there are 2 things that I consider. Number 1 is warmth, and number 2 is utility. We'll talk about the utilities of later, but starting off with the warm gear, I like to keep all my stuff in a bag meant for sleeping bags. I feel that it helps me compress everything well and takes up less space in the car. So I like to keep my bag organized based on what I use the most. So the first thing that's out of my bag is a rain jacket. Now this doesn't have to be the craziest rain jacket, but especially if you live in a place where the weather can switch really quickly, having a rain jacket or some way to keep yourself dry is really important. Because especially in an emergency situation, the last thing you want to have happen is to have your warm layers get wet, which will in turn make you cold. So rain jacket is absolutely essential. Now the second thing I have in my bag is a beanie. I spend a lot of time in the water doing snorkeling, fishing, diving, and when we get wet, as I just mentioned, you get cold. And so a beanie is something I'll throw on after many of the activities I do, especially in the wintertime. And so it's something I always keep in my car. Now the third item that I like to keep in my bag, and obviously is not the warmest layer, but it is a dry layer. And so, after I come back from a trail run, or maybe I just want to switch up a new layer that's not soaking with sweat or water from the activity I've been doing, a nice t-shirt that's non-cotton is a great choice. Alright. So the next items we have, fresh pair of underwear, pretty self-explanatory here. If you ever run into a situation in which you get your pants wet and it soaks through, you always just want to have some way to completely do a full wardrobe change, and that includes underwear. When it comes to pants, I like to go with a pair of pants that can switch into shorts. So even on a hot day, I have new layers I can switch into and still remain cool. But on a colder day, I can have the full pant layer. Now you might be wondering, okay, well that layer wasn't super warm. And that's where the next couple layers come in. So the first under layer I have, and this would be for a winter setting or a cold setting like coming out of a lake or coming out of some snow, is a pair of polyester tights. Now these are from an old race suit from when I used to compete in skiing a lot. But they do the trick of kind of keeping that warmth in. And I always like to put these on top of them, which is a thicker underlayer. So all of these can go underneath those gray pants I previously showed. And in a cold situation, they can definitely warm you up. Now this is kind of the same thing except for the top. It's a polyester layer, kind of hugs your body, keeps that heat in. But it should always be paired with something a little bit more sturdier, like some wool, or a puffy coat, or something that's going to actually kind of give you some of that warmth. The next thing I have is a pair of socks. If you live in a place that has a lot of water and you get your socks wet, it's always important to have a fresh pair. Pull the rest here. So the last thing I have in this bag is a puffy coat. Now this isn't the strongest puffy, but it is going to help kind of preserve some of that warmth and give you that extra dry layer that you might need if you're really cold. So that's what's in this bag. Now I should preface by saying everything in this kit is what I keep in my car at all times. However, I often, especially in the winter, go out in the wilderness with additional gear. So additional clothing, additional puffy coats, wool, gloves, hats. And so this is always an emergency setup that I can come to if I found myself on a snowy pass in a t-shirt, right? That would be a perfect case. So moving on to shelter and sleep, let's start off with the sleep stuff. At all times I like to carry some kind of sleeping bag in my car. Now this exact bag is a pretty lightweight bag, more suited for summer conditions. However, as I mentioned before, during the winter times or the colder months, I always do carry extra gear with me when I go into remote settings. So that would include extra warm gear and extra sleeping bags that are meant for colder conditions. Despite that, however, this bag can be a really good substitute if you ever have to pull off on the side of the road to take a quick nap, or maybe you come across somebody who's injured or who had an accident and you need to keep them warm while paramedics arrive. You can wrap them up in a sleeping bag and kind of help them preserve some of that energy. Next, we have a sleeping pad, and you might ask me, well, if you're sleeping, Kimber, why can't you just sleep in the car? And that's a great question, and I do. So when I do car camp, I usually just sleep in the car on the seat. However, like I just mentioned, let's say you come across somebody, a pad's a really great thing that you can use to move them onto. That'll help them preserve more of their warmth rather than letting it all soak into the ground. But also, if you ever choose impromptu to just sleep on the side of the road outside, maybe watch the stars, you got a pad. Don't have to sleep on the ground. So, moving on, I have a liner. Now, a liner is something that I wouldn't say is a requirement, but something I like to take just because oftentimes when I'm doing outdoorsy things, I'm very dirty. And as I just mentioned, that's a summer bag. So this can offer a little bit of extra warmth, and it's a great addition to my car setup. So when it comes to shelter stuff, I actually like to carry things to make a shelter rather than carry a tent, which will take up a lot of space and can't be used for multiple applications. So right here I have a medium diameter paracord. I also have myself a small diameter paracord, a single person, kind of one person tent size tarp, and then also a 10-foot by 10-foot full-size tarp. Now, in any kind of emergency or survival situation, using the tarp and the paracord, it's very easy to make yourself a bushcraft style shelter that'll protect you from wind, rain, and other elements that you might run into should you not be able to sleep in your car, of course. Additionally, the small tarp can be used to separate yourself from the ground and prevent yourself from getting wet, or even if you're tending to some victim or anything like that, this is a really great small scale tarp that's pretty lightweight that'll keep them from getting super wet. Now additionally, this paracord can be used to create clotheslines and dry off your gear if it's needed, or even string up bear bags, which I've done in the past. So moving on to food and water, I always like to bring with me more food and water than I would actually need in a typical emergency situation. Now what I mean by typical is obviously this is a car kit, and most emergencies are going to occur on a main road where you will probably see a car at least once a day. But for a non-typical emergency, let's say you're 20 miles off-road, in the snow, your car breaks down or something happens, there's no service, and you have to walk all the way back to the main road to get help. This would be a situation where having enough food and enough water to keep your energy up is really going to reduce the number of hazards and make the whole situation less dangerous. So that's really what I'm planning for with the amount of food that I bring. So I bring 2 mountain houses, 2 cans of SpaghettiOs, 2 small normal sized water bottles, and lastly a full gallon of water. Now I never touch the mountain houses and the small bottles of water. Those are kind of my last resort items. But let's say I come out of a really cold or strenuous dive or a really hard mountain climb and I need to drive home, right? And I have a couple-hour drive. I might prepare myself a can of SpaghettiOs, kind of get my energy up, and that's a great use case for that. Additionally, this gallon bottle I refill and reuse all the time, so I'm constantly filling my water bottles with it, and then of course when I'm back in town I'll refill it. Now as mentioned before, in any situation where you go way out in the remote wilderness and you expect to do that, it's always good to bring additional food and additional water and leave these things for emergency cases. And then so most of the time I don't even have to touch this stuff. Now I also bring with myself a fork and a spoon. I wrap them in a towel, and that works really, really well. Now in terms of the things I use to actually prepare the food with, I do have a kind of a last resort fuel here. It's a 2-hour burning sterno fuel. It's one of those propane gels. Additionally, I have a small stove and a jet boil fuel, and I'll demonstrate on the screen exactly why I like this so much. But basically it comes down to the fact that it's super compact, small, lightweight, and actually this particular stove doesn't require any kind of match or lighter to actually ignite the flame, which is really nice for an emergency situation. With that said, I do also have matches and lighters in the car in case that doesn't work. So moving on to the car and utility section, I'm going to show you some of the items that I keep in my car. Starting off with some maintenance towels. This is just for working on the car, keeping things clean. Next is towels for drying off. Now this is really important if you're wet and you need to get warm and dry quickly. Having a towel at all times is really important. I often forget my towels when I go on trips, so making sure I always have it in the car is a really great way that even if I do forget it, I always have it. The next item, which is definitely an optional item, is something I have for dogs or for making sure people can't see my belongings when I'm at a populated trailhead or something like that, and that's a sheet. This can also be used in an emergency situation to, wrap around yourself within your sleeping bag to add some extra warmth, but it's definitely an optional item. Now in regards to some of my seasonal items, I got my chains here, and I got my snow brush and ice scraper combo. These are things that I usually keep in my car between winter and fall. There's not really much else to say about those. One of my recent additions was a fire extinguisher. I came across 3 separate occasions of cars being on fire this last year, and we've had pretty bad wildfires over the past couple years within the United States, and so this is something I've added to my car just in case I ever come across, some kind of fire breaking out, or maybe I accidentally cause a fire with my own stove, so this is something that I'm happy to have now. Duct tape, not really much else to say about that. That's a must. Having a headlamp is really important, and I also have a wind-up flashlight within this kit right here that I'll show you in just a second, but having some kind of light source is really important for at night. Knife and a multi-tool. Now, knives and multi-tools are usually things I also bring when I know I'm going on trips, but also having one dedicated to the car, just in case I forget mine, is really important. We already talked about the paracord, the matches, and the lighter, so I'm not really going to go over those more, but these are some other great utility items to not forget. So, moving on to the actual car kit itself, I have myself here a hike roadside kit, and I've kind of customized it by adding a lot of my own things. So I've added a reflective vest, and this would be a situation where, I don't know, let's say you hit an elk at 2 a.m. in the middle of nowhere, it's pouring rain, and you are calling for help, or you're standing on the side of the road for help, right? Put this on, don't get hit. Additionally, some utility gloves for doing any kind of work, jumper cables, safety glasses, always really important. In here, I've also added a spare headlamp, so I can change that out if I'm ever in the middle of nowhere and my light goes out. Ear protection, more utility gloves. I got whistle, I got various pins and stuff, masks, extra fuses, patch kit, so on and so forth. And then lastly, in this kit comes a small toolbox, and this toolbox features a hammer, some wrenches, various screwdrivers with different heads, some Allen keys, some small electrical tape, measuring tape, so on and so forth, right? So here's just a small, basic maintenance kit that can be used to make small repairs and stuff like that. Now lastly, in this kit, it also comes with a small shovel. Now I've had to dig myself out of snowy conditions before, and having a shovel is very important for me to have in my car. Now this one I really like because it has a pointed tip and also has a serrated edge, so it could be used to cut down a log if you needed to. But then the pointy tip is really nice for piercing into really compact ice or snow, which is mostly the case that I've ran into. Additionally, it has a compass at the end. I've never had to use the compass, but that's there if you needed it. So in terms of first aid, I always think it's really important to have some kind of med kit in your car. Even if you aren't somebody who typically goes out into remote areas, the med kit I have in my car is a survivor wear trauma kit. Now this thing has all the typical med kit stuff, including different types of band-aids, gauzes, bandages, wraps. It also has a tourniquet in here, has a SAM splint in there. Additionally, I've padded it with various medications like ibuprofen, all the way up through epinephrine, from the mild to severe emergency cases. Now, as I mentioned before, I usually carry multiple items when I know I'm going on longer trips, and so I'll usually also have a smaller med kit here. This is the one I actually will carry in my backpack on hikes or mountaineering trips. And then I also have this med kit here, and this just has extra items that are in these, including different SAM splints, triangle bandages, wraps, so on and so forth, right? So these are kind of the first aid things that I carry with me at all times in my car. So in terms of some of the personal items I keep in my car, most of them are related to hygiene, so things like toothbrush and toothpaste, comb, sunscreen, and then also biodegradable soap. So this soap is really great for when you are coming off a trip, you want to get clean, but you also don't want to contaminate the water using a normal soap. You can use this biodegradable soap to wash up before driving back. I believe the brand is called Trek and Travel. It's a small little 40 milliliter container, so it's really great, small travel size. Additionally, as somebody who wears glasses, I always take a spare pair of glasses in my car in case I lose or break these glasses on a trip. So with that concludes the main scope of this video. I do appreciate everyone for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. This is a really great kit that is able to fit really tightly in a vehicle. Over the last couple of years, I've been adding more and more to this kit, so who knows, maybe in a couple of years I'll make a new video about this with some new stuff. But for now, this is what I have in my car, and I've gotten out of many emergency and survival situations with these things in my car before, so I hope it helps out, and thanks for watching.